All right, this is a story about a good departed friend of mine, passed away, and his name is Yisrael Landau. That's his name, Yisrael Landau. And Yisrael Landau was a good friend of mine. He was a friend of mine in Bnei Brak when I lived in Bnei Brak. He prayed in the same place as I did. He was a very, very simple person, a very, very, very simple person. It was hard for him to read, even to read, but we were good friends. He was a very genuine person, a very good person, and we would talk. And he also stuttered. He stuttered, so it was very difficult for him to, to express himself and such. But me, it didn't bother me whatsoever. All the people in the synagogue, it didn't bother them either. But I anyway became friends with them. Okay, so let me just start off the story in a simple way. He came to my house one day crying. I lived in Bnei Brak. He came to my house. He was crying. What are you crying for, Israel? And he pointed to a newspaper, a paper that he had. Either his wife read to him or he read it very slowly. Could be that he could read, but very, very slowly. And it said that missionaries were working in Pardes Katz. Pardes Katz was a section of Bnei Brak, but it was on the other side of this big road, which is called Jabotinsky Road, and no one went there. We're talking about this is in 1975, 76, something like that, maybe 1980. Anyway, so he said that the missionaries are working over there, and he was crying. So it ended up, it's a long, very interesting story, which I'm not going to tell, that I went there and we took somebody else that could speak better. I also was, was barely able to be understood speaking Hebrew. I have a heavy accent and everything. So eventually I learned, but anyway, so we took somebody else, another dear departed friend of mine, just passed away, Yitzchak Lieberman, and we went to Pardes Katz, and somebody told us bring a bag of candies, so we deposited the candies in the synagogue. We got permission, and we made Shabbos programs. We and kids came, and eventually it expanded so that there was like 120 kids. We had each place was like 40 kids with 3 different places, and the whole Shabbat afternoon we went from place to place, and I was with him. Okay, but that's not the story I want to tell. Yisrael Landau. So once I was talking to Yisrael Landau, and he told me a story like this, which is relevant to what we just finished learning. He said that when he was a young boy, so I'll leave out the first part of the story. He was a young boy, and he was, maybe in his 20s, something like that. And that was when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe passed away, and the Rebbe took over. It could be, but he was even in his teens. So the Rebbe, like we just finished learning, that speech that we just finished learning was like from 1952. The Rebbe took over in 1951. So the Rebbe started pushing that you have to go out and spread out Judaism. You have to wake up other Jews. You have to do something. So this Yisrael Landau, despite his other handicaps that he had, but he was a very genuine person. And he took this very much to heart. All right, the story that I told you, this was when he was already older. This is like, I'm not telling the stories in the proper order, right? The first story I told you happened like 30 years after this story I'm telling you now. Okay, so he decided that he has to do something to spread out Judaism. But what's he going to do? He spoke with a heavy accent, with a heavy stutter, and he wasn't a learned person. He didn't really know, and he was sort of shy. So he figured, what's he going to do? So he said he took there were 3 pamphlets that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote. 3 pamphlets. One of them was, let's see, maybe I can find one quickly. Let's see, I doubt it. Let's see, 1 second, 1 minute. No. Okay. Anyway, there are 3 pamphlets like this, right? Small pamphlets, see, like this, pamphlets. And one of them was on the learning of Chassidut, and one of them was the ideas of Chassidut. Anyway, small pamphlets, each one had in it, 30 pages, whatever, 20 pages, 14 pages, yeah, so 20 pages. And he took these 3 and he put them together, and he took a piece of cardboard, and this is what he told me. He took a piece of cardboard and he put it around them, and he drilled holes, and he tied it together so it looked like a book, right? And it had a thing around it. Let's see, we have like this, right? So it went around it like this, and it looked like it was a book, right? Here we go. Oh, and it looked like here, now he's got a book, see? He's got a book, and there it is, he put it together. What did he do? He went to the New York Public Library. This is what he told me. He went to the New York Public Library, and this book was hidden in his, he hid it inside of his shirt, and he took out a book from the Jewish section, went to the Jewish section, and he took out a book and he sort of pretended to be reading it. And then he took his book and put it on the bottom of that book, see, like this, sort of like this, see, like that. And then he put it back in place in the New York Library in the Jewish section, and he left. And that was his spreading of Judaism. Huh? Judaism. Almost, how do you say, humorous. Humorous is not the word I wanted to use. Anyway, such a small thing. This is spreading out Judaism. So listen. So he said he got a job in New York, and the job ended in the nighttime, and he would come by by subway. He would come by subway every come by subway. This must have been like in the 70s. Who knows when it was? Early 70s, 60s maybe, 60s. And he would be coming home. So he said he came on the subway. It was a late night subway, and sometimes it would be empty. And one time he was traveling on the subway, and someone was sitting opposite him, a Jew. He said he had a little kippah on his head, without a beard, So he struck up a conversation. It was a very friendly person. And it seems that the other person was also friendly. It didn't bother him, his stuttering, whatever. And he asked him, where do you live? He said he lives in Borough Park or something. Where do you live? He said, I live in Crown Heights. He said, oh, Crown Heights, you're a Chabad. And he said, yes, I'm Chabad. So the fellow said, well, I'm not Chabad, but I became religious through Chabad. He said, oh, really? Yes. This is like in the 70s, right? 60s, late 60s. Yeah, really? How did you become religious? He said, I was not religious at all. I had no connection whatsoever. I know I'm Jewish, but I had no connection. Said, but I had an interest in Judaism. So one day I was in the New York Library, and I went to the Jewish section, and I was looking for books. I took out a book, and I noticed that there was a strange looking book that was sticking out. It was just like a piece of cardboard. And I looked, and on the cover was written Chabad Chassidut. That's what he wrote on this thing. He said Chassidut Chabad. I said, I don't know what's Chassidut, what's Chabad. I don't know what it is. So I opened it up and I started reading, and there was a picture of this very, nice looking rabbi there, the previous rabbi. And I started reading. I didn't understand anything, but I understood that Judaism is very interesting. It talked about the soul, and it talked about what happens when you do the commandments, and how every Jew is holy, and how God is connected to the Jews, and the Jews are connected to God, and the Torah, and everything. I didn't understand any of it. And I looked at the book, and there was no pocket there. It wasn't a library book. I couldn't understand. So I sat and I read for a while, and I wrote down a couple of the addresses that were there, and I put the thing back in. And that got me interested, starting to wonder about Judaism. I went to the synagogue and I started asking about, what does it mean? What are the commandments and what is Judaism? And that's how I became. So he said, this fellow, Yisrael Landau, he said he actually met the person that his book, his attempt, his how do you say, childish attempt at spreading Judaism, he met the person that it had an effect on. And this person became married, and he had children, and the children are religious, and they have friends, and the friends also were influenced by them. So who knows what this little bit of good, what the amazing ripple effect there was in the whole world, just for doing one good deed and not asking any questions. God willing, a lot of good deeds are being done, and a lot of people aren't asking questions, and they're just doing good. That's the idea, to do good for the sake of good. But it has to be like the Rebbe said, to draw people to the Torah, not to draw the Torah to them. Don't water the Torah down. It has to be pure Torah, but it doesn't have to be all at one time. Little by little, and gradually, in a friendly way, in a kind way. But you have to let people know that you're giving them the biggest gift of all, drawing them closer to God's Torah and to God himself and the commandments. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, see you all on Sunday, 8:15 in the morning, sharp.
Shabbat Shalom.
A good Shabbat with Mashiach now. Shalom Ubracha.
Amen.